The young and the restless spoilers. The last rays of daylight cast long shadows across the Abbott estate, but inside the mansion, there was no warmth, no golden glow. Just tension thick as fog between Kyle and Clare. Their relationship, once delicate and hopeful like a rosebud on the edge of bloom, had begun to wither under the pressure of expectation and unresolved pasts. Kyle, always the romantic at heart, had believed that Clare represented a clean slate, a chance to rewrite history free of the entanglements of summer, corporate war, and family obligations. But lately, Clare had grown distant, preoccupied, her eyes more often clouded with hesitation than illuminated by affection. Conversations grew shorter. Moments once intimate now felt procedural. And then, without warning, Clare spoke the words Kyle had dreaded most. "I don't know if marriage is what I want anymore." At first, he laughed. He thought it was nerves or a fleeting fear. But Clare wasn't uncertain, she was decided. She didn't want the fairy tale ending. She didn't want to be Mrs. Abbott. Not now, maybe not ever. Kyle's jaw clenched with disbelief as Clare, graceful and calm, voiced the very thoughts he'd buried deep within his mind but never dared face. She cared for him, yes. She admired him. But love, the kind that drives people to walk down an aisle and bind themselves together forever, had slipped from her grasp. Her heart was burdened with something she couldn't articulate, a pull in another direction, away from Kyle, away from the future he had planned so meticulously. He felt the rejection like a cold blade through his spine. "You led me on," Kyle accused, his voice cracking with restrained rage. "You made me believe this was real." Clare blinked back tears but held her ground. "It was real. But I'm not ready to pretend forever." The words left Kyle hollowed, broken in ways he hadn't felt since the collapse of his marriage to Summer. Clare, sensing the walls around him collapsing, whispered an apology and stepped back. She didn't wait for permission. She simply left, leaving him alone in the drawing room, standing amidst rose petals he had scattered for a proposal that would never come. But fate, cruel, ironic, and theatrical, wasn't done with Kyle Abbott just yet. That very evening, as Genoa City buzzed with whispers of Aristotle Dumas's challenge to the Newman Empire, another kind of headline emerged from the shadows. One that had been calculated and timed with unnerving precision. Summer Newman returned. She didn't arrive with confetti or fanfare, no press release or social media post to tease her comeback. She simply walked into society in the middle of a fundraising gala, radiant and poised, her hand gently resting on her slightly swollen stomach. The whispers began instantly. Heads turned. Waiters dropped trays. And Kyle, who had come to the gala hoping to numb his heartbreak, stood rooted to the floor, his eyes fixed on the woman who had once vowed to love him for eternity. Summer's golden hair cascaded over her shoulders, her skin aglow, her eyes locked on Kyle with unreadable emotion. The room, for a moment, seemed to collapse into silence as every conversation died, replaced by a singular question: why had Summer come back? For weeks, she had been in Milan, supposedly to start a new chapter of her life. Rumors suggested she was dating someone powerful, an Italian designer with old money, newer scandals, and ties to Marchetti. Others claimed she had simply run away from heartbreak, unable to handle seeing Kyle move on with Clare. But no one had anticipated this: the child. The pregnancy. The bombshell. Summer took a glass of water from the bartender, her fingers trembling only slightly. She made her way across the room toward Kyle, who hadn't moved an inch. As she approached, eyes followed her like the wake of a storm. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said quietly, forcing a half-smile. Kyle swallowed hard. Is that mine?" She held his gaze, eyes brimming with tears. "I don't know." The air left his lungs. Around them, people tried to appear distracted, but everyone was watching. "I slept with Chance before I left," she admitted. "But I also, you and I." Her voice faltered. "There's a window where it could be yours." Kyle stared at her stomach as though it contained both salvation and apocalypse. He thought back to those stolen nights, the tension between Clare and him, the comfort he had sought in Summer's arms even as she prepared to leave. The memory of that encounter, so brief, so charged, now returned with the weight of consequence. "And you didn't think to tell me?" he asked, his voice rising. Summer's face softened. "I wasn't sure. I needed time. I needed space. I thought I could figure things out in Milan, but the further I ran, the more confused I became. And now, I don't know what I'm doing anymore." Clare had been standing just a few feet away, her face pale, her glass still in hand. She had returned to the gala hoping to reconcile, to at least speak calmly with Kyle. But now, watching the man she had just rejected standing in the center of a public scene with his ex-wife, possibly pregnant with his child, she felt the bottom fall out of her resolve. Her chest tightened. Her vision blurred. And then it happened. Kyle, still reeling from the emotional whiplash, turned back toward Summer. In his pocket, the engagement ring he had meant to give Clare still glinted in its velvet box. It wasn't logic or reason that drove him, just raw instinct, pain, and defiance. Without fully knowing why, he reached into his jacket, pulled out the ring, and dropped to one knee. The crowd gasped. "Summer Newman," he said, voice trembling, "I don't care what's happened. I don't care whose child this is. I love you. I've always loved you. Marry me." Summer's eyes widened, her lips parting, breath caught in her throat. Before she could even respond, Clare turned on her heel and walked out of the gala, heels clicking like gunshots on tile, cheeks flushed with humiliation and heartbreak. Gasps and whispers erupted as photographers snapped the scene, already preparing the next day's headlines. Kyle Abbott proposes to pregnant ex-wife in public scandal, Clare Grace walks out. The ring still hovered in Kyle's hand. Summer's fingers shook as she reached for it, then hesitated. "Kyle," she whispered, "are you doing this for me? Or for revenge?" But Kyle had no answer. Not yet. And as Genoa City erupted in rumor, betrayal, and speculation, one thing became terrifyingly clear. No matter what Summer chose, no matter whose child she carried, the Newmans, the Abbotts, and everyone between would never be the same again. The past had returned with a vengeance, and its reckoning had only just begun. Kyle stood in the dimly lit hallway of the Abbott mansion, the velvet-lined ring box nestled in the palm of his trembling hand. He could feel the weight of every choice he had made that night pressing down on him like a physical burden. Clare's rejection, her words still echoing in his mind, "I don't want to pretend forever," and the stunned silence that had rippled through the gala as he fell to one knee before Summer. He had intended to propose to Clare with that very ring, envisioning a future brightened by her gentle determination and her promise of a life together. Instead, Clare had closed that door, turning away with icy disdain and leaving him to clutch at the remnants of a dream that had never quite fit his reality. Now, the ring once destined to symbolize their love had taken on a new purpose, one born out of desperation, love, and perhaps a dash of spite. Because, in his heart, Kyle knew that he could not abandon Summer and the child she carried, his child or chances, no one yet knew, and he could not stand idly by while Clare, the woman he had loved so fiercely, dismissed him without a second thought. He wanted to make one thing clear: he was not a man to be cast aside. He was still here, willing to step up, step in, and claim responsibility for the life growing inside Summer. Summer had retreated to the sanctuary of her childhood bedroom at Society, the club now closed for the night, its patrons long since dispersed into the brisk Genoa City air. She lay back against layers of satin pillows, her hand cradling her abdomen as if soothing the small heartbeat within, a rhythm she could already feel as her own most precious treasure. When Kyle approached, her expression turned from exhaustion to wariness. She knew what he carried, not just the ring but the unspoken challenge behind his sudden proposal. Their last conversation had been a tempest of pain and forgiveness, anger and remorse, and yet tonight he had surprised her by kneeling with the emerald-cut diamond glinting under the chandelier's faint light. "Summer," he had said, voice cracking with emotion, "I love you. I've always loved you. Marry me." In that moment, years of history, shared laughter, whispered confessions during late-night parking lot rendezvous, nights spent dreaming together of what their lives could be, flared between them. And yet he also knew he had spoken not only for himself but for that unborn child, for the life he could give, and for Claire, whose refusal had stung him more deeply than he had allowed. Summer sat up now at the sound of footsteps approaching her door, a soft yet determined knock. She took a deep breath and opened it to find Kyle leaning against the frame, the ring box still open in his hand. His eyes, usually so guarded, were raw with earnest vulnerability. For a moment, she remained silent, studying the man who had once been her first love and one of her greatest regrets. He was no longer the carefree young man she had known. The heartbreak of being left behind by Claire and the looming responsibility of fatherhood had reshaped him into something more. A man capable of fierce protection and selfless devotion. "You shouldn't have done that," she whispered, nodding toward the box. "I didn't think you meant it." Kyle ran a hand through his hair, as if trying to untangle the mess of fate that had brought them to this precarious point. "I know it looked impulsive," he said, stepping into her room and closing the door against the hush of the closed club. "But he paused, swallowing. "I love you, Summer. Not just as a friend or someone I slept with one last time before you left for Milan. I love you as the mother of my child." He exhaled slowly. "I don't know if it's mine, or chances, or what that means for our future. But I do know this, that baby deserves two parents who love him or her, and if you'll let me, I want to be that father." Summer's breath caught in her throat, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. Part of her wanted to be angry, furious. At Kyle's theatrics, at the way he had flaunted the proposal in front of Claire as though to prove his triumph. She could have stormed out of society, but she had stayed. Because, deep down, she understood him, his pride wounded by rejection, his heart aching with the sudden reality of losing the only woman he had ever truly wanted, and the sudden transformation into someone who no longer had the luxury of emotional detachment. She also understood that, despite the chaos of their past, Kyle's capacity to love ran deeper than most people in Genoa City could imagine. He had always wanted someone to challenge him, someone to share not just his triumphs but his darkest fears, and now he faced the ultimate fear, fatherhood. "Why are you doing this, Kyle?" she asked quietly, moving to sit at the edge of her bed. Her fingers absent-mindedly traced the soft satin of the duvet. "Are you proposing because you genuinely want to spend your life with me? Or are you doing it to hurt Claire?" Kyle took a step forward, closing the distance between them. He knelt on one knee again, this time in the safe privacy of her room. "I'd be lying if I said never to both," he admitted, voice low. "Claire's rejection cut me deeper than I thought possible. I thought I could move past it, but the moment I saw her walk away at the gala, I felt a part of me shatter. But when I looked at you, pregnant, unsure, yet still here in Genoa City, I realized that our future isn't about Claire at all. It's about us, about the little person growing inside you, and about the chance to rewrite our story. Maybe it's reckless or selfish, but it's also real. I love you, Summer. I want you. I want that baby. I want to build something positive out of this mess." Summer's tear-filled eyes held his. For a long moment, silence settled like a benevolent veil between them. Outside, a soft breeze rustled the branches of oak trees lining the estate, but inside her bedroom, all that existed was Kyle's open box, his unwavering gaze, and the shared weight of possibility. She remembered the nights in Milan when she had felt utterly alone, the emptiness of posh restaurants and unfamiliar faces. Here, with Kyle, she felt seen for the first time in months. He didn't ask for explanations, and he didn't judge her for her past choices. In his willingness to adopt her unborn child, to claim responsibility regardless of paternity tests or social fallout, she glimpsed a devotion she hadn't thought possible. She reached out and closed the distance between them, placing her hand over his. The diamond ring caught the lamplight, refracting hope into the dim room. "I don't know if I can accept right now," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Because what if the baby's not yours? What if I'm making a mistake? What if?" Kyle raised a finger to her lips, silencing her fears with a tenderness she had missed. "Then we'll face that together. I don't care whose baby it is. I only care that the three of us become a family. I'm not pretending to fix everything. I'm not guaranteed to be the perfect husband or father. But I promise I'll try. I promise I won't let you walk away because you think I'm not serious or because you think I'm doing this for revenge. I'm doing this because I love you, Summer. And I love that baby more than I've ever loved anything else." Summer's breathing steadied as she looked down at his earnest face, the face of a man transformed by heartbreak and by the sudden rush of responsibility. She felt a cautious hope stirring in her chest, a fragile bud of possibility in place of the dread she had carried for so long. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she let her hand slide into his. Kyle rose, and he hugged her gently, pressing her to his chest as though anchoring both of them against the shifting tides of scandal and parenthood. When they finally pulled apart, Summer reached out, her fingers brushing the ring on her own hand before slipping into Kyle's. She closed the ring box, placing it on the nightstand beside her bed. The gesture was simple but laden with unspoken understanding. She would not accept his proposal tonight, but she would not refuse him either. "Let's take this one step at a time," she said, voice resolute but soft. "First, we find out whose baby it is. Then we figure out what our next step is. But Kyle, thank you for caring, for wanting to step up. That means more to me than you know." Kyle smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "That's all I need for now." Behind them, the city lights of Genoa City flickered like silent witnesses to their private pact. Downstairs, Claire sat in Jack's study, scrolling through news alerts and social media posts of Kyle's proposal. She read each headline with growing horror. Kyle Abbott proposes to Summer Newman. Spider sincerity, who's the father? Claire Grace left at the altar, again. Each word was a dagger, a reminder of her own choices and the consequences she could not escape. She wished she could go back, slam the brakes on the evening's events, and reclaim the love she once believed would endure. But now it was too late. Kyle had reclaimed her ring, used it to stake a claim on a future she had walked away from. The echoes of his proposal would reverberate through every circle of power in Genoa City, complicating alliances, reigniting old rivalries, and, most devastatingly, reshaping the bond between her and the man she still loved. As the rain began to patter against the mansion's windows, Summer and Kyle sat on her bed, hands intertwined, staring at the ring box now resting between them. They did not speak of grand gestures or wedding plans. Instead, they lingered in the delicate uncertainty of the moment, tethered together by love, by responsibility, and by the lurking possibilities of heartbreak. Neither of them knew for certain where this path would lead. Whether they would emerge as a family bonded by choice or whether the fragile hope between them would shatter under the weight of scandal and secrets. But in that quiet pre-dawn hour, they clung to the promise that love, even when born from chaos, could still be enough to carry them forward. And so, with hearts battered but not broken, they faced the coming storm, two imperfect souls bound by a single, shining truth. That sometimes, the most terrifying leaps of faith can become the foundations of a new tomorrow.